The canopy of the F-22 Raptor matched the speed of the drifting turboprop exactly, hovering mere feet from its wingtip at 28,000 feet. Outside, the sky was a deep, frozen blue. Inside the civilian cockpit, the pilot's head was slumped heavily against the side window, completely unresponsive. The military intercept pilot tilted his wing, trying to flash his landing lights to trigger a visual response. Nothing. Then, the emergency radio frequency, 121.5 megahertz, known across aviation as GARD, cracked to life. It wasn't a standard distress call. It was a faint, rhythmic sound cycling through the military headsets, a desperate semi-conscious whisper repeating a private non-aviation call sign that no civilian flight plan contained. The two Air National Guard fighter pilots froze. The voice belonged to someone who should not have been conscious at all, carrying a message that changed the entire nature of the intercept. The data would later reveal that the aircraft had been flying as a ghost ship for over 2 hours. To understand how a routine flight reached this point, and why, we need to go back to the beginning. The aircraft was a Sakata TBM 900, a high-performance single-engine turboprop capable of crossing continents at airliner speeds and altitudes. This specific airframe was pristine, with less than 300 hours on its airframe and an unblemished maintenance log. The route was a standard cross-country sector from Rochester, New York to Atlanta, Georgia. Up in the left seat was Captain Sarah Jenkins, a meticulous 34-year-old corporate pilot with 4,500 hours of flight time, including extensive experience in pressurized turboprops. In the cabin was Dr. Robert Vance, a clinical research director traveling south for an international medical symposium. The weather across the eastern seaboard was clear, dominated by a stable high-pressure system. Air traffic control had cleared the flight along a routine, high-altitude airway. As a pilot, I have lined up on runway headings like this 1,000s of times. On a clear day, with an aircraft this capable, you expect a beautiful, unremarkable flight. You brief your routing, verify your fuel, and settle into the rhythm of the climb. But high-altitude operations demand absolute respect for an invisible environment. The takeoff at 13:04 was flawless. The TBM 900 climbed rapidly through the dense lower atmosphere, passing through 10,000 feet where the automatic pressurization system was designed to begin sealing the cabin. The flight data recorder, the digital black box that captures hundreds of parameters of aircraft performance every second, showed that the cabin altitude differential was stable initially. But as the aircraft leveled off at its assigned altitude of flight level 280, 28,000 feet, a microscopic anomaly developed. The cabin altitude began a slow, uncommanded climb. What the crew could not yet know was that the air inside their cocoon was slowly bleeding away into the thin atmosphere outside. The flight data recorder data would later reveal a reading that investigators initially could not explain. It would take them 6 months to understand what they were looking at, and when they did, the implications for the entire general aviation industry were immediate. At 13:42:12, air traffic control issued a routine frequency change. Captain Jenkins did not acknowledge. The controller transmitted, November 7th, 24 Sierra Delta, contact Washington Center on 13372. There was only silence. The controller tried again. November 7 to 24 Sierra Delta, Washington Center, how do you read? Again, nothing but dead air. Recognizing a potential NORAD intercept scenario, 2 F-22 Raptors were scrambled from Langley Air Force Base. When they intercepted the TBM at 14:05, the lead military pilot observed both occupants motionless. In the simulator, we are taught that hypoxia, the lack of oxygen to the brain, is sudden and obvious. In the real sky, it is insidious. It feels like a mild euphoria, a slow slowing down of thought until your capacity to save yourself simply slips away. At 14:18:22, the cockpit voice recorder captured a sound. It was Captain Jenkins, deeply hypoxic, drifting in and out of consciousness. Her fingers repeatedly grazed the push-to-talk switch, broadcasting her childhood nickname across guard, the exact call sign that shocked the military pilots who recognized the desperate psychological regression of a dying aviator. The F-22 lead pilot radioed center, "Target pilot is moving her hands, but she is completely disoriented. She is flashing the radio switch." Then over the emergency frequency, Jenkins whispered, "Bluebird, heading home. Bluebird." But the investigators had not yet found the most important piece of evidence. And when they did, the cause of this accident became something no one in the industry had anticipated. The National Transportation Safety Board launched its investigation immediately, pulling the wreckage from the impact site after the aircraft eventually exhausted its fuel supply over an uninhabited forest zone. To understand the breakdown, we used the Swiss cheese model of aviation safety science, examining the 6 layers of defense that failed. First, the latent conditions, a manufacturing tolerance variance on the cabin door seal primary ring. Second, the environmental triggers, the extreme pressure differential at flight level 280, accelerating the micro-leak. Third, the system state. The environmental control system failed to illuminate the amber cabin altitude warning light because of a faulty circuit ground wire. Fourth, the human factors. Hypoxia impaired Captain Jenkins' cognitive function before she realized the cabin was depressurizing. Fifth, the decision points. Delayed by subtle confusion, the pilot attempted to troubleshoot the radio instead of donning her emergency oxygen mask. And finally, the critical failure. The NTSB probable cause statement reads that the uncommanded loss of cabin pressurization led to pilot incapacitation through hypoxia. The mysterious flight data recorder reading from earlier was resolved. It showed the manual override switch had been bumped slightly during pre-flight, disabling the secondary digital warning cascade. Every time I step into a high-altitude cockpit now, I look at that pressure differential gauge differently. This investigation changed how we monitor our air. It proved that compliance isn't enough. Active vigilance is what keeps us alive. The families of Sarah Jenkins and Dr. Robert Vance maintained a dignified silence throughout the inquiry. The NTSB report provided them with the definitive truth. This was not a failure of pilot skill or professionalism, but an invisible mechanical trap that gave its crew no fair warning. Sarah's legacy was honored by her airline colleagues, who remembered her as an exceptionally sharp captain who fought for her aircraft until her final breaths. Following the final report, the Federal Aviation Administration issued an airworthiness directive mandating the immediate inspection of all TBM series cabin altitude warning circuits. Furthermore, manufacturers integrated an automatic emergency descent mode into modern turboprop avionics suites. Because of what happened on this flight, if an aircraft detects a high cabin altitude and receives no pilot response, the autopilot automatically pulls the power back, turns 90 degrees off the airway, and puts the aircraft into a rapid descent to 10,000 feet where the air is breathable. The question the industry is still debating is whether full automation should completely override human input in every pressurized aircraft class. My view is that automated safety nets are essential, provided type-rating training evolves to match them. Every accident teaches us something that makes the sky fractionally, measurably safer. That is aviation's promise to those who fly. If you want to understand more about how aviation stays safe and sometimes falls short, this channel covers these stories the way they deserve to be covered. See you on the next one.